Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rollwise podcast, your show where we talk about things related to tabletop RPGs. My name is Mike, and I'm here with Jeff. You'll notice that Brent is missing this week because he's taking a little bit of time off, but he will be back soon.
Yeah.
So I thought, since apparently it happened. I don't know if there's a way to really say this any lighter, but the DC20 has washed over the tabletop YouTube scene like you wouldn't believe. Honestly, because and so this is something really neat. Those of you that have watched our channel know that we've actually got a few sessions of DC20 in our actual play because we're doing kind of a grand experiment with all these different high fantasy role playing games, and we're running through the Age of Worms tabletop or Age of Worms Adventure Path. And so we actually thought, hey, let's start with DC20. It sounds like a really exciting game. Somehow, because obviously we're a pretty small channel, somehow Alan found us and he reached out. He said, hey, let's get you, and kind of affiliate and all this kind of stuff. And so we've been looking at DC20 a lot more closely. And in doing so, we've learned a lot about the game, but he just launched his Kickstarter on the 4th of June. And I mean, I was blown away by like being in the role playing space and clicking on videos to sell that stuff. All of a sudden, every one of my videos was like DC20, DC20. I mean, I don't know if that's just the
Oh yeah.
algorithm serving it, but I don't know what did your YouTube page just blow up? Like,
Mine did, and I mean, and just to clarify for people, Alan being the dungeon coach,
mhm,
um, I think reached out to a lot of YouTube channels and offered an affiliate link essentially.
mhm,
That people could put on their videos, and we have one down in the description below.
mhm,
And if people want to help support the channel and also want to get in on the DC20 Kickstarter, there's a link to that, and
mhm.
people can get, some a percentage of that goes back to us. Now that doesn't change what we say or how we say it, but I think that went out to a lot of people, and so a lot of people had new videos, and I think DC20 wound up everybody making content on the same topic.
Mhm.
Sort of made it trend a little bit. It's certainly trending the hell on Kickstarter because it's, I
Well,
think, the number one Kickstarter this week.
it definitely was on the up and up of the Kickstarter. Because when I went to the Kickstarter like main page, I saw it on the front page. So
Yeah.
congratulations to him. And I
Yeah.
think let's pause this moment
Okay.
to go, hey, you know what, Dungeon Coach? We wanted to say congratulations.
Yeah.
Honestly, Monday we talked about it a little bit before our stream was eaten by little techno gremlins. But I want to say good job. Like, I mean, for people that are plugged into different RPGs and everything like that, because we're not the 5e guys. Like we have been eschewing Hasbro and 5e stuff for a while, so we were looking at a lot of different games. But honestly, like this has just blown me away. First of all, you're a cool dude. We've been watching more and more of your streams, and I have to say it was really wholesome to watch that live stream and seeing like, oh, your parents backed your game. So, I mean, I found that to be pretty awesome. But in addition, I mean, you funded in like a minute, which, I mean, that has got to have been cloud nine. And then on top of that, you have really done a lot for your community, and you're really just jumping in. You're streaming all the time. I mean, bravo, like
Yeah.
bravo.
Congratulations.
So we can
I
pretty
do
much
want to.
say,
I do want to point out that we did play before we had an affiliate link.
mhm,
We did like the game before any of that.
mhm,
We actually had content about DC20
mhm.
before the Kickstarter launched, before the press kit went out. And I'm not saying that we're responsible because
No,
we have the amount of subscribers that we have, but like we were on this before a lot of people. Like there were
uh,
other people who got to play test with him, but we were on it
eh,
because
I'll
of
say,
our audience
yeah, I'll
reaching
say that
out and
people,
saying, "Hey, have you heard about DC20?" And
yeah,
we were
I
like,
think,
"Yeah, let's check it out and play it."
yeah, I wouldn't say we're early birds, but I would say that we definitely came to this because it seems like the hype train. Like if you look at how that went up,
Oh, it's
that just went
exploded.
that just went crazy. So I mean, it's been cool to watch like this entirely happen, and it based on what we've seen, the Dungeon Coach, and everything that he's done on his channel, like he's one of those people that just seems like a pretty wholesome dude. He seems really talented at what he's got. And when you mix those together, it's really nice when you see somebody like that succeed in such a competitive market as this is.
Yeah.
And I also think that this is kind of like an ascension. I mean, he was pretty. I mean, he wasn't a small YouTuber by any means. Like that's our title. You can't take that from us.
Yeah, no,
Um,
yeah, we have a small
we're small
channel.
YouTubers, but he was up there. But now, I mean, he's got Will from D&D Shorts talking about it. He has Bob the World Builder. He's got Dungeon Craft. I mean, like these just
And yeah,
you
we
just
did an interview with Dungeon Craft. He was
Mhm.
live today with the DM Lair.
Yep. So I
They
mean,
they did a live, so
as impossible as it seems, is he is literally everywhere on YouTube at this point, at least in the RPG space. So it's pretty cool to see, honestly, to kind of like watch this happen, like, and just see how it goes, and obviously since we're playing the game, I mean, it's like there's a lot of exciting things, and I don't really get caught up in like the hype as much or bandwagony stuff, but like this has been fun. I mean, really,
no,
yeah.
playing the game has been fun. The rules have been well laid out, easy to read, easy to understand. For the most part, we've had a few questions, right? We've had a
Yeah.
few things we've had to work through, but I think in one of the talks that we had after one of the live streams, like
Mhm.
it's the most fun I've had playing a fantasy RPG at level 1 in a long
Mhm.
time. Like, I had a decent amount of fun with Pathfinder 2nd edition. I have not had fun playing a first level character in D&D 5e in
In years.
a few years. Like, it's not that it's horrible, because I've played some games where at first level, you're, you know,
I mean, people
not
skip first level. Like they literally just go, okay, just make a level 3, whatever, and we'll just
right.
skip that tutorial crap. But I think before we get into like our breakdown of it, in our experience with the game so far, let's first of all get the important information out there just as a reminder, so that people, if
Okay.
they haven't seen it, they know what they're getting into. Because I mean, DC20 is it's a familiar game, and that's what's interesting about it, is that like we're playing Age of Worms, which is a D&D 3.5 adventure path. But when you think about the systems that can slot into that, DC20 slotted into that, and it didn't feel funny, right? It felt like,
No, it
oh,
didn't.
this adventure path could be played using DC20, which I think, before I go into the next part here, it's really awesome, because that, I mean, that gives it so much playability that you can just, oh, I'm going to take this structure of these games and these stories, play it in DC20, and it's going to still feel like, you're in that same comfort zone if you happen to be a D&D player. But the next important thing is right now is that we're making this video during the Kickstarter. Now, obviously, I don't think we're going to catch the early birds, so we're not going to really talk about early bird specials or anything like that with this. But if you are really curious about it, the new I'm gonna just kind of show the Kickstarter page real quick,
Yeah.
just so people can see it. Is that this has gone off, and I mean, we're catching this at nearly $900,000, 8,360 backers. I mean, if you're interested in this game and you want to see it, get your copy of it and all that kind of stuff, now is the time. Um, Dungeon Coach had mentioned kind of like this is going to be hopefully the kind of best introductory price, and he really doesn't want there to be a huge barrier to entry to play this game. I mean, he really believes that this is a game that he's really interested in this game, to see how it turns out. He really wants to bring those people from 5e to a game that feels familiar, feels heroic, feels fantastical, and is just right out of the gate fun to play. Um, but there's a lot of goodies that are going along with this too. Like, you get monster packs, you get one shot adventures, you get a whole bunch of extra goodies if you go with the Kickstarter stuff. And I think I saw one place where he was talking about like his real goal is to get the core book into your hands. And then once he gets like the game built, he wants to get out the monster, like a big monster book out there. And then once he gets even farther into it, I think he wants to get out like the DMG type stuff, so he can give you guidance on how to play the game from a dungeon mastering perspective. So he's got basically he's got milestones after this he really wants to hit. But right now it's just let's get the book in your hand, and you can even download the rules as it stands right now, like the alpha version of the rules that we've been
Yeah.
playing. You can get them off the Kickstarter page. So if you're wanting to give the sample a try and see how it goes, I mean,
It's
hell.
it's 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 always nice, especially with a role playing game, if you get
Mhm.
some portion of the rule set,
Yep.
that you can look at and try before you buy.
Yeah.
It's everybody has a limited budget. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And Just because something's hot doesn't mean you need to get it. But if you want to find out more, at
Yeah,
least the
yeah.
information is there for you to take a look at.
Yep. And the one thing that I'm going to mention is that when we played the alpha, really it only focused on combat. And I don't know if how like the other pillars, because he does mention that he has like the social, the exploration, and the combat pillars kind of addressed as part of the DC20 stuff, but I haven't really seen what those look like, so I can't really comment on that. But let's let's go. Let's talk about combat. so so the first thing about I mean, and as a DM, I thought this would be a little bit crazy to manage, and I think if like you don't have a good system of trackers and stuff like that, it could be. But they have a 4 point action system. You as a player, how did you appreciate the 4 point action system and like as playing from a mage's perspective, I guess?
Well, it was the first time in a while that I was playing and I didn't have to go, okay, what type of action is this thing and what type of
Hmm.
action is that and what exactly am I allowed to do, and then needed a chart or a list of stuff. And I realized that once you have played a game for a long time,
Hmm.
you don't need a chart laid out in front of you to explain, what's a major action or a minor action or
Hmm.
whatever names every different role playing game. Because I'm not trying to single any one of them out, but
5e.
it could be 5e, but I mean every system has some sort of terminology that. No, we had it. Gosh, it was in one of the other games we played in the live stream where I was like, "What can I, what exactly? Like, I know I can attack, but what else can I, do on my
Hmm.
turn?" It gave me choice.
Yeah.
Everything requires an action point.
Yep.
Everything requires at least one action point, but I can also spend the action points to make what I do bigger or better or
Hmm.
hit an extra target or do extra damage or
Hmm.
save one for in between rounds and have some sort of a reaction if I get attacked. Or
Yeah.
and some systems allow stuff like that and some systems don't. But I felt
Hmm.
like I had choice. I felt like I didn't have to worry. I just had to keep track of my four, and they
Hmm.
reset after, was it each of my turns?
At the end of your turn, it reset.
Right.
Yeah.
So I could go in and I would have action points where I could use a reaction or something else or do something on
Hmm.
one of my teammates' turns to give them a bonus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it made it fast, fun, exciting. It felt like I was capable. It felt, we've talked about this a lot. It felt kind of cinematic. Like, and
Yeah.
I know that isn't necessarily the experience that everybody's looking for, but man, I had a hell of a lot of fun playing that way.
Well, and it's because I think that in my based on the DM side of the screen, what I thought was interesting about the 4 action points is that it gave you so many more choices than I was actually, because of how they're built in. And we've played Pathfinder 2e, and so I know that in Pathfinder you get your 3 actions and all that kind of stuff, and you have a much bigger action pool than you do in even D&D. And then of
Sure.
course if you flip the script and you go to things like Dragonbane where you get 1 action, and if you use it on a reaction, sorry, you're skipped. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like the
Yeah.
other end of the spectrum. This feels like you're on the I have so many things I can do spectrum. But unlike things like Daggerheart, where I felt like, because at least in the original intention of Daggerheart's combat, where it felt like you just kind of go when you feel it's right and you create a very narratively appropriate scene that you battle through. This felt that like every person had a set number of things. It felt balanced between people because everyone was getting the opportunity to do the same number of things, even though the types of things that they got were very different. And I mean, it was so here's the one point. Your first time running it, if you don't have a good tracking system, is crazy. Like keeping track of all the different things you do from your turn to your next turn and how you react to people and how you defend people and help people and do stuff. I mean, there's a lot that you're doing there. It can create some confusion and all that, and it can be a little bit
That's
of
that's probably a fair point.
I'm going
I
to
haven't
say that
GM'd it.
I'm going to say that you have a lot to track in that thing, and if you're used to like Dragonbane, where you're just like, okay, did you go? Yes, like a binary, like yes or no, like, and you
Right.
go to that where you have literally 4 actions that can be so they can be used in so many different ways, and then of course different classes have different current like resource pools that they can use to do additional things. mean, it can be a little bit intimidating at that first thing, but I
Okay.
felt like the proficiency wasn't like super hard to get into. And
Oh, that's good.
honestly, and honestly, since you guys have it and monsters have it, monsters can do cool things. Like I'd created a monster for Age of Worms thing, and I had converted some monsters as I felt were fitting for it. And like, I mean, having a wolf like leap at Brent's character and like push him back because Brent
Oh, yeah, he didn't like
mucked up.
that.
Oh, he hated that, but he just got like, he got pushed back in this like super cinematic because this big wolf hits this dwarf and just like, but you could see it, like you could feel that like
Right.
the wolf just
No,
knocks him back on the
it
stones.
felt very on theme,
Yeah.
for the enemy. As a player, I think right at first, I think my fear
Hmm.
was that I was going to accidentally spend too many action points,
Hmm.
over the course of a turn. And then I think towards the end, I was like, no, I'm usually not even necessarily always using four. It became more that I was afraid I was going to forget. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I guess I'm going to chain this spell to a second target, or I'm going to do,
Hmm.
I'm going to try to do some extra damage or something like that because
Yeah.
I I kept pretty good track because it felt like every one of those was meaningful and impactful to my character. Did it feel that way as a GM?
It did. Well, and it felt like if you're like, okay, well, I can only think of two things that I need to do this turn, and you go, and you're looking at those action points, and you go, oh, hey guys, what you doing? And then you're like, let's make it bigger. so you
Exactly.
can
Yeah.
so you can either roll with damage and all that stuff. I mean, I really appreciated it. And it kind of leads me to my next point, which was kind of neat, is that I mean, this is, and this is more Brent's area than I think our area by any means, is that when we look at like how damage is done in DC 20, this was it's so simple, but it's so interesting to me is that it's like the better you roll on your hit, the better you do on your damage, right? So
Well,
like,
yeah, potentially, as long as if your target number is
mhm.
if you roll 5 or more higher than your target number, and for every 5 after that, you increase
Well,
damage
you get
dramatically.
two tiers of upgrade, right? You get your heavy
Okay.
and then brutal hits. But I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that you do like it, it bumps that damage up, and each point of damage like means something. And I thought that that was kind of like, I mean, for a person like Brent, when he finally, because like when he finally gets that good roll, he's like, I rolled that 19. It modifies up to a 23, and I hit him. And then because I didn't crit, I still roll my standard damage dice.
Right.
And it's like, oh, I nailed that guy for a whopping 2 points of damage.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly felt like that was a really neat way to change your
No,
damage to make it.
it's an interesting concept,
Mhm.
to like you exceed, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
concept. Like it wasn't just a good swing.
Mhm.
It was a great swing. Like for
Yeah.
Brent's character, a martial character.
Mhm.
Or, you I guess you put that spell right in a vulnerable spot, because
Mhm.
the explosion appears to be a little bit bigger than you thought it was.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
You
just
know?
it's really cool to be able to do those heavy hits and everything like that, and I think
Yeah.
and it's not just and that's I mean, every system has this applicable roll high benefit, like, if you're rolling a skill check and you beat it by 5, usually there's extra benefits, but
Right.
I mean, like I said, it's just kinda like it's like, oh, because
But
a
it's
lot of
it's
times.
taking that and going, why is that only applied to these types of situations? Why isn't it
Mhm.
applied to these other types of situations?
Yeah, and I mean, but you've seen things like, well, like I've seen at least skill checks in like, D&D games where they're like, okay, if you roll a 10, you get,
Yeah,
oh,
you
you
get
see a person who's, he seems kind of suspicious. Oh, you rolled a 15, you see a person who seems suspicious, and you can tell that he has a leather satchel that he seems to be clutching onto. If you roll a 20, you know what I'm saying? It goes up to
right, yeah.
your legendary
No, so
success.
I've read some adventures, right, where
Mhm.
that kind of stuff is baked in,
Yeah.
where the authors have put that kind of information in, or we've played in some homebrew things where
Mhm.
it kind of felt that way. Like I didn't expect to quite learn as much as I did, but I guess I rolled really well.
Yeah.
So it isn't something that we haven't seen before, but
Mhm.
it does help. Like, and it's occasionally, it isn't all the time, but it does
Yep.
happen. And it's like, wow, that that felt good. You know,
Yeah.
I it's interesting because I've watched a lot of videos on combat, right? Because that,
Mhm.
if I'm being honest, that's where 5e slows down for me to
A lot.
like an excruciating point, especially at higher levels with larger monsters. Well, it feels like fighting some of the bosses in video games where they're just HP soaks. They're just okay.
Mhm.
So they gave him 1,000,000 damage, and on average, I'm doing 5.5 a turn.
Mhm.
So it'll take me 20,000 turns to kill the monster.
Yeah.
That's how 5e feels to me sometimes. Um,
Yeah. And it can feel like, and I mean, we played at, like, honestly, 5e was our game for several years in there, and then, we kinda, like, as soon as we started this podcast, we started changing it up and getting different
well, trying other
getting
stuff,
different games in out there, and so I remember one of our last 5e games that we ran. I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like it was the winter one where you guys were going through the pass up to
Oh, was it
whatever.
Wasn't it Icewind Dale? Was that the
Was it?
last
Yeah,
one?
it was like you guys
Yeah.
were going to Icewind Dale or something like that, and it was a module and everything. And I just remember that scene where one of you was running around like a hallway having a zombie chase after you because you just, like, you couldn't hit the zombie worth a damn, and the zombie couldn't hit you, so it just turned into this weird, like.
It was odd. No, it was odd, and I'm not trying to hold one-offs against a game, but, you
Mhm.
know, combat's taking forever is just as bad as combat's being too short. Like, if you one hit the monsters or the monsters one hit you, that at times it can be a wake-up call, it can be kind of exciting, but at other times it's like, "Uh, this feels not fun."
Well, it doesn't feel challenging, right? Like.
Yeah, and like in D&D, like with like, okay, you can do more than just swing on your turn, but like there's times where like if I'm on one side of a monster and my partner's on the other side of the monster and we're just both swinging away and we're getting extra rolls, there's no incentive for us to move. There's no incentive for us to do something different other than I swing as hard as I can
Yeah.
and I miss.
Well, you try to do
And
your most damaging abilities,
yeah,
right? You
you're
try to you try to do
exactly
your biggest, at least what's the biggest thing you can do
the
tactically
biggest
at that
average
moment.
type. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so
So, and
it's.
I'm not trying to harp on that, but the combat in DC 20 did not feel that way to me. And I get we only had a couple of combats. That's why we're
We're
going to play some more of it. We're
yeah,
going
we're
to
gonna
see what it's like.
3
You
more
know,
sessions in maybe. So hopefully by the end of the Kickstarter, we'll have gotten 5 sessions of the game in, and we can give a true look at it. And, I would be curious if we could look at the other components too, like the social and exploration pillars and all that, because he's put a lot of thought and effort into how this all works. So
yeah,
I'd be really curious to see how the rest of it goes. Um,
yeah. I'm looking forward to getting out of the alpha, moving into the beta. I mean,
yeah.
it's still a work in development.
Well, and I think and so I was kind of looking at some of the other the components here, and I think I when moving away from combat, your basics, he does limit it down to the 4 attributes: might, agility, intelligence, charisma. He just uses a modifier, so, like, rather than having like an 18 that translates into a +4, it's just a number and all those things. Um, and so his approach that I thought was nifty was that, like, he lets you be flexible, so you can have at a barbarian kind of character where, like, they're not dependent on how, like, there's benefits to choosing a certain build for that, but you're not limited by that, so you can build a character that can kind of cover some of their flaws in some ways, at least mechanically, or has a higher intelligence than
Right.
strength and is still functional as the type of character that they are.
They
It doesn't.
just they're just using another stat as their
Mhm.
primary stat, and it does give you a lot more build flexibility.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
that's kind of neat. If you want to do something a little, a
But
little
it was
different,
but
a
it's a
little
tweak.
unique.
But it's a tweak that a way that you uses it that I think so many people, like, when you play D&D, you go, "Okay, well," like, you're like, "Okay, well, as a fighter, I need XYZ." Like, you don't go, "I want to be the fighter that represents this way in the game. I'm the fighter
Right.
that needs mechanically to do this." And, it's like it's such a subtle difference because, there are people that role play and there are some people that role play, like, as in, ROLE.
Sure.
They can do any character anytime anywhere, but then there's other people, the ROLL, that will look at the stats and they will say, you it's not that you can't build an unoptimized character, but you really hurt your gameplay experience by making yourself so bad at the game. So
Well, potentially, right?
yeah.
Potentially, and there are some games that are designed to be
Mm,
more like it's the luck of the dice,
mhm.
and you get what you get, and you don't complain. And maybe you're gonna have to re-roll a character every session. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we're gonna play
But
Dragonbane for a few
yeah,
sessions, and so far it seems like I haven't said we gotten too deep into combats, but the first combat was a little bit of an eye opener for everybody. But we'll see how
well,
that
yeah,
goes.
yeah, yeah. We're playing Dragonbane on our home game
Hmm.
with our friends. We don't that one doesn't get streamed, or it gets talked about occasionally, but
Hmm.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
But when we were playing DC 20, I don't know. I've enjoyed what we've experienced of the system
Mhm.
so far, with realizing that we haven't experienced everything yet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it still seems like, obviously, like, and I know when you read the rules, you see stuff in the rule book. And this is one of the first times I've read the rules and I go, "Ooh, I wonder how that would look." Like because I know that you chose a mage character, but they have spell duels, for example. And you can have magic duels with other casters where your magic is colliding a la Harry Potter style, right? Where, you just have this really cool effects happening, which I think is a really neat way to have that represent. And we just haven't had that happen. And so we're still a lot to unlock here, but you never know. I think there's enough time. I think we can get there. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I'm interested. I've only cursory looked at the rules about spell duels, and if I'm being 100% honest, I was a little confused by them, but it hasn't really come up yet. So I need to reread those.
Yeah, no, I mean it's pretty cool. And it's like a different version of counterspell. I mean, if we're thinking about it in that regard, because as a reaction, you basically react to somebody casting your
Right.
spell, and you cast a spell at them, and like if they cast an offensive spell at you and you cast a wall of ice, I think that was the example that they used and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, I understood the example, but then I started reading stuff, and I'm like,
The mechanically, it was like, how does this play out?
okay, yeah, mechanically, but
That's
like I
fair.
said, it was a quick read. Like, we read a lot of rules, and
Hmm.
we learn a lot of games, and we play a lot
Hmm.
of games, and so I'm not saying that every new game that we try that we're going to play for a few sessions gets me diving into a 300-page rule book. Not talking about DC 20. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
poring over
Well,
every word to fully understand it. I try to familiarize myself with the rules, so I at
well,
least understand that there's options and things, but I don't pretend to be an expert.
Well, I think that if I was to kind of give the little bit of the thesis as to how we play is that I mean, there's obviously stages, right? There are the people that look at a rule book and give you their impressions, which is a viable way to say, okay, based on first blush, this game doesn't have any glaring or obvious failures. Then there's the we played it, how does it feel at first glance, and then of course you have your arc where at the end of a
Right.
campaign, now you're expert in this, and you have 8 months, 10 months of playing the game. Do you feel like, does the game still hold up? And honestly, I feel like most of the games, because we're playing 2 to 3 sessions of each game that we trial, usually a small adventure or something like that. I
Yeah.
have to say that, in terms of fantasy, high fantasy, cinematic fantasy, so far this has been a lot of fun. Like I would put it at, I mean, I'm not gonna I can't rank them per se, because all we've done is, in terms of the like high fantasy, what have we played so far? We played Rule DC 20, we played Daggerheart, we played Distal, we've played obviously 5e. Because I mean, we haven't played the one D&D game that's coming out shortly, but we did look at the play test initial stuff in the
We did look
beginning.
at the play test. We haven't we Tales of the Valiant is on the list.
Yeah.
We've had some other people request some stuff like 13th Age.
Mhm.
I don't know how we fit that in, because I think the Kickstarter ended today at
Well,
the
we
time
could
of
play
recording for
first
the
edition.
second version. We could play
Yeah.
first edition and see what it's like. The
Yeah.
second edition seemed interesting. It seemed like they'd cleaned up some stuff.
Oh, I mean, and hopefully they do. I mean, there's other games out there that we
There
could
are.
throw out there. It'll be interesting to see if it holds up, because right now, so far, if I'm saying like just generic fantasy role playing, I think DC 20 is pretty high on that list of, or it's a short list of recommendations that I think that anybody that I would tell that played D&D, I'd say try DC 20 instead, and that's kind of cool. Like, I mean, I don't. I would be really curious to see because we also have obviously the MCDM RPG
Yeah,
coming out,
NCDM's coming up, and
and
we'll have to
I
try
think
some of the beta.
we're getting really close to them having a play testable version for backers out. And I don't think it'll come with any kind of like NDA or anything like that. I think that'll be getting out there because that is another game that I think it had a huge launch,
Oh, that was huge. That was massive. Yeah.
like big launch, but
A lot of people looking forward to MCDM.
it didn't have the same like tidal wave of videos that I saw for DC20, which was crazy. It just they have such a huge established community that like I
That's
mean
true.
like a juggernaut. They were just like, "What are you stretch goals?" And they just crashed through all those. And obviously, I back, so I'm excited to see what it's going to look like. Um, but it's going to be different. It's going to have a different feel. It's going to have a much more tactical feel. Um, it should still be action packed and cinematic, but I think just in terms of like, I mean, comparing it to some of the other games we have, like Daggerheart has a place. I think they need to. I think I need to feel what their final rules look like because right now I
Yeah.
feel like they're fighting with themselves in terms of vision of what they want the game to be.
Well, the thing I like about the Dagger Heart, and I'm not trying to roam, but is that they've been willing to listen to feedback,
Oh,
right? Like
hugely.
it's obvious that they're listening to the community,
Hmm.
and if they make a misstep, they're not afraid to walk it back. But we need to get further into that, and we need to play it again.
Yeah,
But we
because they
will.
because they
It's
because
on the list because I had fun playing Dagger Heart.
did, but it's interesting because we've only played the alpha of DC20, and I felt like it aligned more with what I want to play in a fantasy game than I think than Daggerheart did, for example. Um, I don't mind
I
the
think yeah, both bring things to the table for me, but
yeah.
I'm having as much fun in DC20 as I did, even in our Pathfinder second edition
Oh,
game.
and based on what I've been told by the home table, people like that Pathfinder second edition game, so that's pretty good praise.
No, we did, but
Yeah.
it was we're not always on the same page as a group.
What you mean we're
Sometimes
not monolithically aligned in thought?
no, and that sometimes that makes it really fun, like in the Pathfinder game, and in other times it makes it really chaotic.
I
I still have fun with our home game,
yeah.
but there are times where some of the games have felt like, was that us or was it the system or was it was it the adventure? I don't,
I don't know, but I'm still going to enjoy that just the alien war stories until until
Oh, Alien was brilliant. Alien
it
was
was
brilliant. That was another game where like none of us were on the same page. That's because none of our characters were on the same page. Like that was by design. That was what it's supposed
yeah.
to be. And then, and then I went off the rails. I lost all hope. My one goal was to have my own ship and what little money I could have. And once I saw that go out the window, I was like, I guess I will save humanity and how do we blow up the ship
Yeah.
without telling
No,
anybody else? Because I don't
it's
trust
true.
any
It's
of
true.
these people.
It's true. It's true. So I mean, I guess in closing, and I think that's really what it is that DC20 is going to be a solid game. Um, Based on what we've seen so far, it's got the framework that it's only going to get better and more refined as it's being, finalized and everything like that. I do have to say it's not rules light. So if I'm going to say who's this game for, if you want a rules light experience, there's a lot of reading in DC20. And I wouldn't say it's less reading than D&D. I would say it's about the same type of reading because you're having to learn and even though it feels familiar, you're having to learn different action economies, you're having to learn different skills. He has trades, he has the saves, and how the saves represent is different than they are in fifth edition. So you're going to have to kind of like take yourself out of D&D mode and kind of
Yeah.
understand how these go. And that's been my experience with it. Like, how do I, because I'm literally converting D&D using DC20, and I'm having to go, well, there's no poison save, so how do I make them take a some sort of save that represents
Sure.
this, and while it's simpler in some ways in DC20 to have that happen, in the conversion process and all that stuff, it's still a different thought process that goes into it. So I can't say that it's like if you want a rules light version of the game, at least there may be one in the future. Like I thought it was interesting because on one of his streams he mentioned that like he plays it with his kid. He makes like an index card version of it. I don't know if you had heard that, but
I hadn't heard
uh,
that.
he makes like an index card version of it, and he plays it with his kid. And I thought that was just adorable. I can't wait for my kid to be old enough to be able to roll d12s and stuff like that and succeed or fail. Who knows? But and I think when it's desired state, it's going to be just like it's like picking up D&D and learning D&D. So got a
Yeah,
lot of
I would put it there. It's not the heaviest system I've ever seen, but it's certainly not rules light. But
no,
it
and
there's enough familiar stuff if you've played most of the high fantasy games that I've played, that I think you can get the hang of it. And there's going to be a lot of things that feel familiar, and there's going to be a lot of things that feel like this is like an evolution. This is like a next step, and in some cases, I think better than the original. It's
it
it's not a clone, but it's its own thing. But there are similar mechanics. So
and I don't want to like. I mean, I know we talk a little bit of we give WotC and Hasbro tough love for D&D and all that stuff, but I really
no, I
feel
love
like
D&D. I used to love WotC. I hate Hasbro. You're welcome.
that's fair. But I feel like in terms of just because and this is where I think that they get in trouble a little bit is that each edition that they try to put out, they try to give you another reason to buy into D&D. And like for me, I went from 3.5 to 4, and I kind of like I dropped off that bandwagon really fast. Not I think Brent stayed much longer than and you stayed much longer than I did. Fifth edition, I dropped very late in the game. Like I mean, I'm only a recent abandonee, because
Yeah.
that was basically 20. Actually, I think 2022 was our last D&D 5e game. Honestly, that's
No, I think so. And then we had talked about starting something up. Like we did Pathfinder, and then we had talked about starting up something in fifth edition, and then
no, we just
OGL stuff happened.
yeah,
Just corporate overreach over and over and over and over again. You can just go search a news archive for Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast and D&D for the last 18 months, and it's just them
killing themselves. Like just
tripping over their own feet, biting
yeah.
their own tongues. Like it's all self-inflicted, and some of it has actually been harmful, directed at the community. Like they've backed off. They backed off the OGL thing, but somebody inside that company was like, no, this is what we have to do. We're going to take all of these people that have been actually
Mhm.
helping us build our brand, and we are going to just
Just get
end that. It's just going to be
yeah,
done. And
it's
yeah,
true.
no, I that it's hard to support that because we know a lot of people that are
Mhm.
creators that make content for that game. And I'm
Yeah,
not, they can do whatever they need to do, but when
still.
somebody threatens you, threatens your livelihood like that, like it should make you think. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing all this plethora of new
Mhm.
games. And there's a lot of creativity, and a lot of it's really good. Does
Yeah.
everything work? No, everything doesn't work. But everything doesn't work in D&D or Pathfinder or whatever system you play.
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time you played in a home game? And we'll have to have a conversation about this, that wasn't homebrewed in some way.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, this doesn't work for me, so I hated it. So we're doing it differently than it's
Yeah,
written in the
we
book.
at our table we do this,
Yeah,
and that's so
exactly.
common. And not to say that it won't improve over each
Right.
iteration won't improve because obviously even watching through the alpha he's improved each because I had to
Yeah.
relearn the game between things because he changed
Yeah,
stuff and I
no,
was like,
updates
oh
happen.
crap,
That's what happened. Yeah,
he changed it
that's what
right
happens when you
before I
decide
went
to
on.
play an alpha version of the rules, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Frequent changes may occur.
So but I think that it's interesting to me because like and my comment was really directed to say is that you kind of expected the next edition of D&D to be something new, interesting, kind of got you re-engaged with the mechanics and in a different way because D&D mechanics are okay, you know.
They're fine.
They're okay, but I mean it's like but this is I think that what happened here was that we stumbled upon something that was exciting to play in some ways and that was that was interesting to me because I mean I like playing the games either for A to tell a really good story or B because doing things in the game is fun. Like, and I don't and I honestly as a guy that's mostly on the DM side of the thing, I get to tell the cool stories and I get to benefit from playing and having the game be fun. So it's like I want both of those things to kind of sync up and I think that it doesn't get in the way of me telling a story and the fact that like my creatures can do really cool things and stuff, like especially if there's combat and all that. That's at least a good start. Like I said, the other two pillars aren't there yet, or at least I haven't experienced them. But like the fact that the combat's Like I really liked when you shot that lightning bolt and just licked across the ground and all that kind of stuff. Ooh, ooh.
No, no, that was fun. I like it was nice, feeling power. There's
Yeah.
this power fantasy that comes with a lot of role playing, and
Mhm.
as a game that excels at giving you that power fantasy, DC20 is a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. So so with that being said, if you like 5th edition and you have it in yourself to buy another set of rules and you want to try a game that will take you out of your comfort zone a little bit but give you a pretty rewarding experience, I think try DC20. If you want a rules like game, might want to pass for now. If you want like a heavy narrative game, I don't think this is necessarily like a narrative style game, but I think it hits a lot of the other good stuff that you get out of high fantasy, high high powered fantasy and all that stuff. So that's it. I think that's
Awesome.
a pretty good chat about DC20. I know it's just the two of us, so we'll be welcoming Brant. Forgot how to speak after
Yeah, we
40
forgot
minutes.
his name. He didn't.
He didn't. He wasn't here, so we forgot who he was. No, it's just this is what happens because we're not scripted, obviously. So his name is Brent. Ooh, he's gonna get me for that one later. Um, but we'll be welcoming Brent back shortly, and obviously, we appreciate everybody who takes takes the time out of their day to listen to our ramblings about various RPG topics. Obviously, if you have comments and you want to leave them so we can respond to them, we really appreciate it. And if you like the content that we do, like, subscribe, share. We try to release content on a fairly regular basis. So we like to chat with you folks. So hit us up, tell us what you like and what you don't like, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah,
outside of that, how do they get a hold of us again, Jeff?
they search for at rolewise, all one word, on Facebook, Threads, or Twitter. And you can engage with our social media accounts there, or you can send us an email, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
Yeah. So thank you. We really appreciate it, and I think Brent says, and always, we appreciate you being here. Remember to roll well and roll wise,
Be safe out there.
and be safe out there. I think I
Thanks.
got it.
You got it. You nailed it. It
I got
wasn't as good as
yes.
Brent. It
It
wasn't as good
definitely
as
was.
Brent. I'm sorry.
He'll give it next time. So, all right. See you, everybody.